Good evening and welcome to the public meeting for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 262 Main Street West. Before we begin, I would like to provide the land acknowledgement. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations such as the Hattawantagh, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the land on which we live. Thank you. The premise of this public meeting is to provide the opportunity for the public to provide input on the proposed application. I would like to stress that there have been no decisions or recommendations made by council or planning staff on these applications. A previous open house was held for this application on Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. This meeting is conducted in accordance with the town's procedural bylaw. All participants are asked to conduct themselves with decorum and respect and provide the opportunity for all members of the public to express their opinion in an environment of tolerance on all points of view and free of intimidation. The intent is to create a venue to encourage people to participate in the process and provide their input. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Town of Grimsby to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Grimsby before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Town of Grimsby before the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is adopted, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. With us this evening is Jared Marcus, the IBI Group, planning staff in attendance, Adam Gidnack, planner, Bianca Verchia, heritage planner, Walter Basic, assistant director of planning. Tonight we will start with staff providing a brief presentation outlining the process of the application. Next, the consultant team will provide an overview of the proposal, and that will be followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions. If you have not already done so, please ensure you have signed in so you will be informed of future meetings on this proposal. As we navigate the virtual public meeting, we ask all participants for your patience. Each participant will be called in order and provided 10 minutes to speak. Each presenter may speak only once. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please do not duplicate the remarks. All the comments are being recorded and will be taken into consideration. When you are called, we ask that you state your name and address. Persons addressing council should confine their remarks to the business at hand and shall direct their comments or questions to the chair. Staff are taking notes of all the questions asked this evening. At the end of the delegations, the consultant will be asked to respond to all the questions and comments raised. If you feel that your questions have not been responded to this evening, you can email our planning department at planning@grimsby.ca. Adam, welcome to give your presentation now.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yep. So thank you all for joining. My name is Adam Gignac, if you don't already know me, and I am one of the planners working for the town. I just wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight to this public meeting where we'll be discussing the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision to be located at the current site of 262 Main Street West, which currently contains Nixon Hall. So to begin this public meeting, I'll just be going through a brief presentation, providing you all with some insight into the planning process of this application. and it briefly introduce to you what is proposed for the site. I'll leave most of that to Jared later on. So joining me for some comments will be Bianca Varecchia, our heritage planner, who will address some of the heritage concerns. And Mr. Jared Marcus from IBI Group in Hamilton will be able to give you all some greater details on what this proposal entails. And then following these presentations, there'll be time for all of you to ask questions, raise your concerns, anything you can think of. Yeah, so just to go over the purpose of tonight's meeting, we would like to provide you all with an overview of the planning process for these types of applications, so the zoning bylaw amendment and the draft plan of subdivision. So this includes the process from start to finish and where exactly the town is currently located in this process. An overview of the policy and regulatory framework will also be provided, including the relevant official plan policies that are in place. Agency feedback has been provided and will also be touched upon. Most of the agency feedback was included as an appendix in the agenda for this meeting. Mr. Jared Marcus will provide you with some of the additional details about the proposal, and finally, again, we'll answer any questions you may have. So why exactly can plans or bylaws change? So under the Planning Act, authority is provided to submit applications for development plans that may not meet the current official plan or zoning bylaw. So in this case, the zoning bylaw. So a zoning amendment is required. The town's role is to process these applications that come in. And these applications are only able to amend the official plan or zoning bylaw if it is determined that the proposed changes comply with the overall intent of the official plan, and the result of these changes is a development that will be compatible with surrounding neighborhoods. So here we have a flowchart that outlines most of the major milestones of the planning process. So for an application of a zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision, we start with a pre-con meeting with town staff and any relevant agencies, which includes but is not limited to the Niagara Escarpment Commission and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. So this meeting, which happened this past spring, outlines the requirements a potential applicant would need to submit for a zoning bylaw amendment application. So the pre-con, again, was held this past spring. So once an application is ready, an applicant would submit the required documents outlined at the pre-con and fees to the town for the town to review for completion. And upon the completion, a notice is sent out and agencies are asked for comments. And the public at this point is also able to provide comments, as this information is posted, in this case, to the town's website at the current planning applications page. And all notices for any public meetings, including the open house or the previous open house, was also posted at this location. So we are currently at the statutory public meeting stage, which again provides an opportunity for comments to be made about the application. And at this stage, initial agency and public comments have already been made, with revisions potentially being done at this stage. As it was stated earlier, the open house for this application did happen on October 12th. With some comments that will again be addressed. And after the public meeting, if all of the concerns about the proposal are believed to have been met, staff will prepare a staff recommendation report for council regarding this application. And a decision on the application would be made at a future council meeting with the opportunity to appeal the decision afterwards. So the planning process is an open process, so it allows any member of the public to have a say. So this public meeting is one of those opportunities to give your opinion on this application. And additionally, you can write a letter or an email addressed to the planning department to provide comments. So again, this email would be planning@grimsby.ca. You can also send a copy of a letter or email to your councillors as an alternative. And this public meeting is not the last opportunity to provide comments. Comments will continue to be accepted until the staff recommendation report is prepared. So in order to stay informed about this application, you are invited to provide your mailing address to the planning department. And by doing so, you'd receive any notice of future meetings, information on how to obtain a staff report, information about speaking in front of the committee, and information on a decision on the application can be appealed. Sorry about the vacuum in the background. So just moving on to a brief introduction about the proposal. This slide shows what is the preliminary proposed draft plan of subdivision. So this application for the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment is proposing 5 new residential lots in behind the current building known as Nixon Hall, which will be on a remnant lot. So these new lots are currently planned to contain 1 single detached dwelling on each lot, with the current proposed zoning change from Main Street MS zoning to residential detached 4 RD4 zoning. The existing lot, again, will be maintained as a remnant lot with the Main Street zoning designation being maintained as well for that lot. So this slide just provides a bit of detail about the building footprint, the official plan information for 262 Main Street West. So this is designated as a low-density residential area. The policies for this designation are located in section 3.4.2 of the official plan, and it permits a mixture of residential uses, including single attached dwellings. It's considered to be a part of a stable residential neighborhood, but does allow for limited development, evolution, and rejuvenation. The maximum permitted height in this designation would be 2.5 stories. Other relevant sections of the official plan to be considered are section 3.4.7.4H, which reflects development along Main Street, and section 7.3, which outlines policies for properties along Main Street as well. Yep, so this slide outlines the zoning bylaw and what is the current zoning. So it currently is a Main Street MS15 zoning, which permits the 15% maximum lot coverage. And again, what is being proposed would be an residential detached 4, RD4 45 on the 5 new residential lots, while Main Street 15 zoning would be on the remnant lot. So there are proposed modification standards for the new lots, including for minimum lot area, maximum lot coverage, minimum front yard requirements, and minimum rear yard requirements. While the existing lot will also be a part of the zoning bylaw amendment for minimum rear yard, maximum building depth, and the maximum front porch encroachment. So over 4 weeks during the summer, staff did circulate the application to different agencies for comments or concerns about the application. We received many comments from the agencies, with a full list of the comments, again, being found in the staff information report, included as an appendix of the agenda for this public meeting. One comment received required the adjustment of the setbacks of lots 1 and 2, shown here, the northernmost proposed lots, to be set back 1.5 meters on each side of the property line to accommodate a 3-meter wide storm easement, as shown on this image right here. An additional comment required some minor changes to the noise impact study, which again are summarized in the staff information report in the agency comments. And other staff departments in the region also included conditions of draft approval for the project, which all, again, are listed in that same section. So next, I want to turn it over to Bianca to address some of the heritage comments and recommendations. So Bianca.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening, everyone. I am Bianca Breccia, and I am the Heritage Planner for the town. I'm here tonight to provide a short heritage-focused presentation. I will note this application will be reviewed by Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee tomorrow evening, and all of their heritage-related comments will be incorporated into the recommendation report presented to Council. The heritage resource on the subject site was designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act in 2004. Which provides long-term demolition control to the heritage resource and provides mechanisms to ensure the appropriate preservation is provided to the structure. A heritage impact assessment was submitted with the development application. The town had a heritage impact assessment peer review conducted. Town staff received an amended heritage impact assessment, which provided a response to the peer review recommendations. All of these recommendations within the peer review were addressed within the amended heritage impact assessment. All of these documents, along with the heritage recommendation report, can be found on the Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee agenda on the town's website. It is of importance to note that the proposed development will require heritage permits as the property has protections under Part 4 of the Act. Once the heritage permit is received by the town, we will bring the application before the Heritage Committee for further review and comment. It will be during the heritage permit process that detailed conservation efforts can be achieved to ensure overall compatibility and distinguishability with the proposed development. A conservation plan will be required within the heritage permit application. Through the conservation plan, we will be able to ensure appropriate conservation measures are in place to ensure the overall integrity of the structure and the cultural value identified on the subject site. Heritage professionals on staff prepared the following recommendations to ensure the overall integrity of the site. I will note the full recommendations are available within the staff recommendation report on the public meeting agenda on the town's website. These recommendations are as follows. Staff recommend that the cultural heritage value identified on the site be conserved and that the integrity of the structure be maintained. Staff recommend that a detailed construction plan be submitted with the required heritage permits for this application, and that the construction plan provide mediation measures to address vibrations caused by construction equipment and travel along Linden Lane and at the rear of the property. Staff recommend that the construction plan mediate any potential impacts to the large butternut tree to the west of the heritage resource. Staff recommend that the detailed heritage conservation plan submitted with the heritage permit ensures precautionary measures are in place to protect the cultural heritage value on the subject site. These precautionary measures shall include construction hoarding for both the tree if needed and the heritage home, vibration and crack monitors, and other conservation measures as needed to mediate any impacts to the heritage resource. Staff recommend that the conservation measures within the heritage conservation plan be in accordance with best practices outlined within the standards and guidelines for conservation of historic places in Canada. Staff recommend that access be provided to heritage professionals on staff to perform regular observation of all crack and vibration monitoring devices, as well as overall observation of the subject site. Staff will reference best practices and property standards during these observations. Staff also recommend that the designation bylaw be amended after the property has received the proper approvals for the severance, and that the property owner agree to the designation amendment, and that the property owner agrees to not object to the designation bylaw amendment. It is also recommended that at this time, staff update the designation bylaw to include attributes of cultural heritage value, update the statement of significance, and update the bylaw to the new Ontario Heritage Act requirements established through Bill 108. Staff also recommend that vegetative screening be added to the proposed adjacent lots to the heritage home in order to maintain the views along the significant Main Street West corridor, and that vegetative screening be provided to ensure mediation that is compatible and sensitive to the potential view impacts. Staff recommend that vegetative screening include trees within the Carolinian forest in an effort to maintain and enhance the Carolinian forest species found throughout the town of Grimsby. Staff also recommend that securities be taken for the cultural heritage resource for any potential structural damages caused during construction of the proposed residential dwellings to the rear of the subject property. Staff also recommend that detailed architectural drawings be submitted during the heritage permit application, and that efforts be made to ensure compatibility and distinguishability with the cultural heritage resource. And finally, staff recommend that the fence removal recommendation within the heritage impact assessment be left to the discretion of the property owners. Heritage professionals on staff have thoroughly reviewed all materials pertaining to the heritage components of this application and are generally satisfied with the above noted recommendations put in place that the heritage resource on the subject site will be conserved through the proposed development application. It is also again worth mentioning that the heritage resource is being lovingly restored by its current occupants, and planning staff have been working alongside them to guide the restoration and provide professional support. Thank you.
That'll be all from us, Mayor Jordan.
Right, great. Now next we'll hear from Jared Marcus from IBI. Welcome, Jared.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I have, excuse me, I do have a presentation to share, so if I have authorization for that.
Yep, that's good.
You should be able to see the presentation on the screen now.
Yep, we can see it. Thank you.
No, we
Thank you.
can't see it.
Is it up there now?
No,
Nope.
it's a black screen.
How about now?
Still black.
I could see the screen.
I could see it too.
Yeah, we could see their screen.
As we see a rise in infections across the
It's
There
there,
we
Joe.
go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go full screen, it made it better.
Okay, is that, does everyone see the screen now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Thank you, Mr. Gignac and Ms. Varecchia for those presentations. Thank you, council and members of the public for attending. My name is Jared Marcus. I'm here from IBI Group and I represent the owners of the subject land, West Niagara Enterprises, Inc. So I don't think I'll belabor the context and the too much because Mr. Gignac did a great job, but the subject lands are located on the northeast side of Linden Lane and Main Street. You can see the subject lands outlined in blue on this slide. There's approximately 36 meters of frontage on Main Street and 125 meters on Linden Lane, and the subject lands are approximately 4,000 square meters in area. Of course, as you've heard from Ms. Varecchia, the Nixon Hall is the designated structure on the subject lands, and that's located up near Main Street. And the rest of the remainder of the property is vacant with treed row on Linden Lane and as well on the east side of the property. And there is a tall wood fence obstructing views of the property from Linden Lane. To the north and west of the subject lands, you have a low-density residential neighborhood that was constructed in the early 2000s. To the further northeast, you have the Van Geest greenhouses, which I understand is being partially decommissioned right now. And then, of course, you have on Main Street your typical large lot historic lot development. Next two slides just show a street view context. Here you can see a view looking north on Linden Lane with the the attached garage part of the Nixon Hall located just on the middle right-hand side of your screen, and of course the board fence all the way along the east side of Linden Lane, obstructing views of the heritage structure and the property. Next slide is a similar view, but it's looking south down Linden Lane. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you have the fence and the treed row, and then you have the existing single detached dwellings on the east side, which provide you some idea of what the context of these new dwellings, if approved, would look like from the street. As Mr. Gignac indicated, the property is designated as low-density residential area within the Town of Grimsby official plan. You can see the approximate location of the subject lands in the red circle. Within the existing or within the zoning bylaw, the entire subject lands are designated as Main Street zone with the site-specific MS-15. The official plan permits singles and semis up to a maximum height of 2.5 stories and a medium density or a maximum density of 25 units per hectare. And the existing zoning for the entire subject lands permits only one single detached dwelling with a maximum lot coverage of 15% and a maximum height of 9 meters. As you heard from Ms. Varecchia, there was a heritage grant that was recently approved in September. Project chronology, just to give you an idea where we are in pre-consultation meetings were held in January and November of 2020, the first being a 3-lot severance, and then the second pre-consultation held for the 5-lot subdivision that's before us today. Formal applications were submitted in April of 2021, and those applications were deemed complete and circulated to the public for review in June. And that municipal and agency review is ongoing. As I mentioned, the Heritage Committee approved a grant for the restoration of the exterior of the house in September, and we held a neighborhood open house in October. And November 22nd is the statutory public meeting. That's where we are today. Tomorrow will be a Heritage Grimsby Advisory Committee meeting. And finally, at some point in the hopefully near future, we will be back before Planning Committee and Council for decision and ratification on the application. So coming out of those pre-consultation meetings, we were tasked with preparing a number of reports and studies to support the proposed development. The first being a servicing brief, which looks at the municipal servicing capacity and preliminary grading of the subject lands. Second being a tree management plan and arborist report, which assesses the existing vegetation and makes recommendations for saving or removing trees. The third was an archaeological assessment, which of course reviews the cultural heritage from an indigenous and early European settlement perspective. Fourth is a noise report, which assessed the noise impacts from Main Street West and from the adjacent greenhouse facility to the east. And lastly, we had to retain a consultant to prepare a cultural heritage impact assessment and a planning justification report. And the cultural heritage impact assessment, as you heard from Ms. Verrecchia, has been reviewed by a peer review consultant and staff, and revisions have been reviewed of that, and generally the recommendations have been found to be acceptable. And the planning justification report analyzes the general intensification and other policies in the provincial plans and the regional OP, and takes into consideration policies within the official plan and provides a general planning opinion on consistency with the town's OP. And what's specifically stands out in the OP is, as Mr. Gignac mentioned, were policies which guide development in stable residential neighborhoods, and that's section 3.4.7.4, which you'll see a short summary of here, which looks at development that will avoid or mitigate inappropriate interface between uses, consistent relationship between housing forms and lot sizes, and preserves and reflects existing character of Main Street. And so our planning justification report provided a professional opinion that this project was consistent with all those policies. So the development proposal itself, as you heard, is proposing the creation of 5 new lots that would front onto Linden Lane. You can see those here on this page labeled as lots 1 to 5. They would be on the approximate rear half of the property. It's almost perfectly cut in half here. So the rear 60 meters would be 5 new lots, and the front 60 meters would remain as a lot for the existing heritage structure, which would remain in situ. Those lots will range in size from 365 to 392 square meters in size. All of them will be 12 meters in width. And the the development proposal seeks to rezone the rear half of the property from MS15 to RD4 with a site specific for 45% lot coverage, which is consistent with some of the lots on Linden Lane and Sumac. And then the front half would remain as an MS15 zone for the existing dwelling, with some site specific amendments to respect the existing location of the location and size of the dwelling. Next slide shows a greater look at what those 5 new lots are going to look like. The squares in the middle of these lots are not buildings. They are potential building envelopes. That represents the size of a potential envelope based on minimum zoning requirements. And these will be custom design homes. So there are no current building plans. So we don't know if they will have a 6-meter front yard or a 7.5-meter front yard or a 7.5-meter rear yard or an 8-meter rear yard. We don't know those details, but this envelope is based on meeting those minimum zoning criteria. You heard it from Mr. Gignac. The only change to the development proposal through staff and agency review was a change to these two lots 1 and 2, which saw the building envelopes reduced in size from a 1.2-meter side yard to a 1.5-meter side yard. And that that doesn't change the lotting fabric, just the size of a potential building envelope. Next slide shows the modifications we're asking for as part of the zoning amendment. Again, it's a change from MS15 to RD4. You can see here in red the modifications we're asking for: 365 square meters where 400 is required, 45% lot coverage where the parent zone doesn't have a requirement, 6 meters where the parent zone requires an average of the dwelling to the adjacent dwelling to it. So by our estimation, that dwelling next door was 6.11. So we're just asking for a clean meters and a rear yard setback of 7.5 meters where the parent zoning asks or requires a 25% depth of the lot, which would have worked out to approximately 7.8 meters in that range. So we're just asking for a clean 7.5 meter rear yard depth. And I would note that the parent zoning bylaw requires a 9-meter building height, and we are not asking for any modification to that building height. Next slide shows the context of the existing heritage structure within the new proposed lot boundaries. You can see that outlined in red. So obviously the front yard and side yards would remain as they are today because we're not proposing any changes to that structure. And the new lot line would create a new rear yard of approximately 11.5 meters or approximately 38 feet for those who work in Imperial. And this slide shows the proposed modifications to the existing MS15 zone that applies to the front half of the property. So you can see we're asking for a reduction to the required rear yard, which is 25% of the lot. We're asking for 11.5. There's a restriction to building depth of 20 meters. The existing depth from the front of the house to the back of the attached garage is approximately 25.2 or 27.5 rather. So we're asking to reflect that existing condition. The maximum height, we did not have a survey shot of the house, so we're not exactly sure how high it is, but we would be asking to just reflect whatever the existing house is. And then lastly, a maximum porch encroachment where the parent bylaw only requires your porch to encroach in front of your house by 1.5 meters. The existing existing porch sticks out approximately 2.6 meters from the house. And again, that's an existing condition we're looking to reflect. So as we noted, there was a open house meeting that was held on October 12th. A few members of the public had concerns and a few members of council had questions, and those are summarized here. I would note that the staff report before you tonight does note that someone had a question about timing of the development, but when I went back through my notes, I didn't have that written down, so I do apologize for that. So the first concern was regarding removal of fencing on site, and you'll have seen in the staff report as well as the heritage report that the recommendation is that the board fence along Linden Lane should be removed. It is obstructing views of the heritage structure and the properties, so there would be a removal of that fence, and the recommendation that a replica of the existing wood picket fence that you'll see on the Main Street frontage be continued around the west side of the property. There was no current plans to provide a privacy fencing between the existing dwelling and the new lot, but I have seen the recommendations from the heritage review, and there wouldn't be any concerns with providing privacy fencing or vegetated screen as is recommended. There was a second concern about street parking and on-street parking, and I can't really speak to what the status of on-street parking. I do note that there is no signage, but that's something that we would recommend staff would have to review with bylaw to determine if there's a need for new on-street parking restrictions. Of course, with the introduction of 5 new dwellings on the east side of Linden Lane, there would be limited availability of parking on that side of the street. And third, there was a concern about tree removal, when it occurred, what happened. As I mentioned at the open house meeting, that was done prior to the arborist report happening. It was done prior to any formal applications, but there were trees within the site that were removed out of concern of the owner's insurance company due to proximity to the foundation and concerns about trees falling. Again, those trees were not reviewed, and that was done a year and a half ago. So there's not a lot of additional information I can provide to that. And like I said at the start, there was a fourth concern noted in the staff report with respect to timing. And timing is a hard one to predict. It's a product of how quickly a municipal review process to get to a conditional approval stage can happen. Then it's a matter of how quickly we can move through the formal clearance of conditions and registration of a plan, and then of course sales and physical construction. So I know from speaking with my client that they would love to have this approved this year. I doubt that'll make it through the current review process in that time, but we're looking at hopefully a January approval, maybe February approval, and then 6 months to clear conditions. And hopefully in that time, sales have happened, and we would be hopefully starting construction in summer, fall of 2020. And I would expect for only 5 houses that that construction process could be done within 6 to 8 months. And so that's our presentation. We do have a conclusion here that our opinion is that the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the 2019 growth plan, conforms with the region's official plan, conforms to the town of Grimsby official plan, and is representative of good planning and is in the public interest. So those are our summary conclusions. That's our comments for you tonight about the proposal. And if there are any comments or questions from the public or from council, I'd be happy to try to answer those later on tonight.
Great. Thank you very much for your presentation, Jared. Now we'll open it up to members of the public. And first up, we have Catherine Gonson, 202 Ridge Road West. Good evening, Catherine. I think you're muted, Catherine.
Hey,
There you go.
does that get me in? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Jordan and members of the Planning Committee and public. I am generally wanting to thank the developer for a good planning proposal on what is probably one of the last United Empire Loyalist infill properties in Grimsby. And it was a grave worry to me that a proposal might be made to move the building forward on the lot or some such thing. And I'm really grateful that that hasn't reared its ugly head. I am concerned that the Leah Wallace Heritage Impact Assessment report, it has some errors in it. And I would respectfully request that the errors be corrected because this is going to be in the public record. And I believe that the statement of significance with revised heritage impact assessments should be accurate for future. This development is going on what was the original Crown Land Grant to Alan Nixon Jr. UEL to the 40. And And actually, the Mars Home development to the west of this was also on that same Crown land grant, as was the Alan Nixon Jr. UEL blacksmith shop, which became Grimsby's first museum in the 1960s. And I would very much like to respectfully request that the council ask the developer to please provide a Museum of the Street plaque for this property somewhere, whether it be along Linden Lane or Main Street, that identifies information about possibly not only the Nixon family, but the Jordan family and their beautiful nurseries and 3 generations on the Alan Nixon lands. Because it's a significant part of our town's history, and it should be remembered and recognized. Alan Nixon Jr. was born in America, contrary to Leah Wallace's report. He was not born in Ireland. His father, Alan Nixon Sr., was born in Ireland and immigrated to New Jersey in 1744. And he was not in the British Army. He was in the New Jersey regulars. And these things do, strange as it may seem, matter with time. Alan and his wife, Mary Moore Nixon, were already here at the 40 prior to 1787. Their second son was actually said to have been the first white child born in this area in 1787. And actually, I believe the blacksmith shop, which is a significant heritage building, and Brent Sagen, the present owner, I think should be given an award for the great job he's done renovating the entrance to that building. And that building was actually on one of Elizabeth Simcoe's maps of the 40 when she visited the Green family here. Also, there is a significant building down Roberts Road, which is the Evergreens. And it was the daughter of Jonathan Pettit, builder of the Evergreens, who married Dennis Nixon, the grandson of Alan Nixon, who was the builder of Nixon Hall. I know you don't want to get bored too much with this, so I won't extend it too much further, except to say that I believe that this statement of significance should also talk about the fact that Nixon Hall served as a hospital for Grimsby at one point in time. It housed farmettes during the war when the Grimsby boys went off to war. These are all important and significant things to Grimsby's history. So I appreciate you allowing me an opportunity to offer this information. It was even the front lawn of Nixon Hall was part of a bowling club, for a lawn bowling club for Grimsby too. And I have a really great picture of this, of the gentlemen of the town of Grimsby who were bowling on the front yard of Nixon Hall. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Bothwell.
Could I just ask, please, of the delegate Catherine for clarification? Did she mention who the builder of Nixon Hall was? Because I think the heritage reports indicated they didn't know who the builder was. And I would just like that if she could repeat that, that would be great.
Do I have to tick some? Thank you. It was Dennis Nixon, the grandson of Alan Nixon Jr. And actually, within the family, it has been passed down through generations that Dennis actually built over the foundation of what was the original dwelling that had been built by his grandfather when he built his home closer to the blacksmith shop. He started out with a log cabin down by Lake Ontario, like everybody did. But it's my understanding that, and it was called Nixon Hall because the family had originally immigrated to America from Manor Hamilton, County Leitrim, Northwest Ireland. And there is today a Nixon Hall there.
Thank you again, Catherine. Up next, we have resident Eric Willems, 73 Sumac Court. Good evening, Eric.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So go ahead.
Thank you. The one comment I have is I'd like to be certain that these 5 houses are compatible with future construction. You may be in a delay. These 5 houses, the parking and the traffic maybe have a compatibility issue with the future development of the greenhouses that are east of this. And I ask that there is some consideration given when we're doing this development for the future development that extends Sumac Court towards Kerman Avenue. There is some talk of not having a throughfare so that all of the traffic will be on Linden Lane. And that definitely would be a very congested area, taking in consideration that these lots are quite narrow. There was originally 3 lots. Now there are 5. And so parking will not be possible on the east side of these lots of the street. The west side will be congested with parking. That street's already narrow today. And if we add 40 units through the extension of Sumac Court, that could be a difficulty with regard to traffic. I'm not obstructing the idea. I just think there should be some comment in the plans by the town referring to traffic, parking, fire truck access, and then access to Kerman Avenue. And that's pretty much it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Your comments will be noted.
Thank you.
Next resident, Neil Newberry, 62 Sumac Court. Good evening, Neil.
Just to add to Eric's comment, has there been any consideration for traffic control, given the number of units that are going to be added into this, what was a dead-end street? You're going to potentially have a thoroughfare coming from Kerman through Sumac, up Linden, and people trying to get around somebody doing 10 miles an hour down Main Street. This could potentially become a highway. I mean, people racing up and down trying to get around someone who's going slow. The parking aside, which I think is going to be a very big consideration, considering the number of houses, I think something has to be done about speed or traffic control.
Also, I'm Neil's partner. Whenever these developments have come in, they've created a lot of dirt, a lot of flying debris and what have you. And there's never been any compensation or goodness done through the developer for the neighbors, such as washing their windows or their cars. It's one thing to have washed your car for Saturday night and then to have a truck come down with dirt, and it's all for none. So that's my complaint.
I mean, we went through this with the Jordan neighborhood going in, when the road was torn up for the sewers, when they cut in to the sewer lines off of Main. We've gone through this a number of times.
All right, that's your comments are definitely
You're on
noted.
Okay.
All right, seeing no further speakers, we'll open it up to any questions from members of council. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just have a few quick questions. If staff could, or the applicant could help me understand how it went from 3 lots in January 2020 to 5 lots in November of 2020. And then if they could also indicate where the septic tank is on the property, because I understand the septic is going to be decommissioned and has to be filled in. They're going to hook up to the Linden Lane sewer. So I'd just like to know where the location of the septic is on the property. The maximum height in the heritage impact assessment, the peer reviewer also noted that it was 2 stories, even though it says 9 meters, and was basing her assessment on a 2-story maximum height. Considering we don't know the height of the Nixon house, I just am concerned that we need to look at the height of those proposed buildings, just to look at how the massing will be in relation to Nixon Hall, and knowing its height would be helpful. So those are just my question. Oh, also one other quick question. If the applicant knows anything about a white farmhouse that used to be as well on the property, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. I know about that white farmhouse. I remember it well. It was about, there was a barn behind Nixon Hall, and then probably about 35 meters, 100 feet behind that was that White House. And Mr. Odd, former owner, used that as his, he had workers, actually workers from Jamaica at that time. It was pretty early. The real import worker hadn't really happened yet, but he was one of the first to actually have workers on his farm in the summers. But anyway, I digress. But that is the end of the speakers. No further questions from council. Thank you, everyone who came out and participated. Councillor Vardy, go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like an answer to Councillor Bothwell's question, how you went from 3 to 5. I don't believe we got an answer to that.
No, I don't think we did. And perhaps there are questions or any more answers or comments from both staff and IBI group. Walter, did you want to comment on how it went from 3 lots to 5 lots?
Thank you, Mayor. Rationale, there was a preliminary meeting where there was 3 lots proposed, and then there were 5 lots proposed. But the rationale behind the switch, I couldn't give you the background to that. That's the applicant could answer that question probably.
Is the applicant here?
Through you, Mayor Jordan, the applicant is Mr. Miljan, and it looked like he was trying to speak, but he's on mute. So,
all right, John, you're still on mute.
Peter, can you unmute him as host?
No, I can ask to unmute.
Oh, while we're waiting, we'll move to Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sharp, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. What are the widths? What's the frontage of the lots that they're proposing?
The proposed frontages are 12 meters.
And that's 30 feet or so?
It's the exact same width as all of the lots in, or the lots in the subdivision on Sumac.
So that is.
That's 39.4 feet.
Okay. Hey, so they're the same width as the lots on Sumac?
That's correct.
And how deep are the lots? Like, how wide is the existing lot on Main Street?
Jared, do you have the plan in front of you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, through your Mayor Jordan, the smallest lot is I want to say smallest lot. So we're talking the north end of the site is just over 30 meters in depth, and the largest lot, which would be lot 5, which is the mutual boundary with the existing dwelling, would be a little over 33. So that's in a range between 100 and 108 feet in depth.
Okay, so they're all about 40 by 100 feet.
Approximately, yes.
Okay, thanks very much.
So, Mr. Mayor, I still have my hand up. I have another question.
Go ahead, Councillor Barty.
So, I guess I'd like to address this to our planning staff. Sorry, you can hear my dog in the background here. Would it be more appropriate or more fitting with the surrounding neighborhood if there were 3 to 4 lots instead of the 5? Are we making too many here? That's my question. In terms of what's around that neighborhood.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to pose a question back to you again.
Not just
lots of the same size, but less of them, or less lots and bigger lots? What are you referring to?
Would fewer in number and bigger in size be more fitting with the neighborhood, with the existing, and not just with the zoning, but with what's existing in that neighborhood? Would that be a more sort of appropriate and, if you want to call it, look and feel with its surroundings?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the proposed lots are virtually identical in size to the lots on Sumac Court and the lots directly across the street.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. My question is to Mr. Basic. The maximum lot coverage that looks like they're asking for is 45% maximum. Minimum is 15%. So, Walter, what's the approximate lot coverage size on Sumac in the houses that are in the neighboring subdivision there? Just approximate size. That's all. Maximum for Sumac.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it'll take me a second or two while I get that particular page of the zoning bylaw to display on my screen. So just a sec. In Sumac Court, the zoning regulations vary from RD 4.45 on the easterly side of the subdivision and RD 4.35 on the westerly side. I would presume that the lots on the westerly side are larger because of the cul-de-sac lots, so they're pie shaped. So coverages there would be a little bit smaller in terms of percentage, primarily, but the houses appear to be about the same size.
Yeah.
So the proposed zoning regulation for this site is the same as the existing zoning immediately to the north.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you, Walter. I was just looking for, compatibility to existing neighbors. So you're saying it's pretty much the same then, eh? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Walter.
All right, seeing no further questions, thanks everyone for your participation in the public meeting. The consultants and staff will take back your feedback, and please contact staff at planning@grimsby.ca if you have any additional comments or questions, or in your case, Catherine, a more history that you happen to find. So the public meeting is now closed. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you very much for attending. Good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.